A personal assistant accidentally sleeps in her billionaire boss's bed and he falls head over heels. But before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Harper James had always known that working for Aiden Mercer wouldn't be a walk in the park. He was sharp, emotionally distant, and had a gaze cold enough to chill a midsummer afternoon. As his executive assistant at Mercer Innovations in Boston, she handled his precision-level demands with grace, but she also knew that a single slip-up could cost her everything. Now, they were at Azure Bay Resort where Aiden had just finalized a multi-million-dollar partnership with major tech investors. The work was done, it was time to unwind. Even you get to take a breath tonight, Harper, Aiden said, which was rare coming from him. Seated at Ocean Ember, a sleek beachfront restaurant, they were surrounded by sharply dressed executives clinking glasses. The waiter hadn't even finished pouring their wine before Aiden raised his glass again. Harper had never seen him like this. So unguarded, laughing, making dry jokes, even complimenting the crab cakes. Incredible. I never thought you had a soul, Mr. Mercer, she teased, swirling her drink. And I never figured you knew how to relax, Miss James, he quipped, a rare smirk pulling at his mouth. Time flew, and soon their dinner turned into a casual wine duel, each trying to outdrink the other. You're clearly tipsy, Aiden said, pointing a fork at her. You're definitely drunk, she retorted, aiming a butter knife right back. He narrowed his eyes, ready to argue, then simply shook his head and let out a hushed laugh. I'm calling it. Heading to my room, he declared, wobbling slightly as he stood. He left. Harper lingered a little longer, the mix of ocean breeze and vintage wine softening her edges. By the time she stood to leave, she could barely walk in a straight line. Just get to my room. Shoes off. Bed. Easy, she muttered, stumbling through the corridor. The issue? She had no clue where her room actually was. The numbers on the doors were doing an interpretive dance. Who chose this font? Drunk hieroglyphics, Harper complained, squinting hard. Then she noticed a door slightly ajar. Thank you, universe, she smiled, not thinking twice. She slipped in, kicked off her heels, dropped her purse somewhere near the dresser, and face-planted onto the bed like it was a cloud. Best hotel ever, she mumbled and instantly passed out. The problem? It wasn't her room. The next morning, Aiden Mercer opened his eyes to a strange sound beside him. His first thought, weird dream. Second, why is my pillow breathing? Third, my pillow has hair. Eyes now fully open, he turned and froze. Harper was curled beside him, fast asleep, entirely unaware of the storm she'd just created. Running a hand over his face, Aiden tried to remember the previous night. Had he invited her? Had something happened? Before he could dig deeper, Harper stirred. She stretched lazily, basking in the plush bed beneath her. Best mattress ever, she sighed with a sleepy grin, turning to hug what she thought was a pillow, only to meet a solid chest. Her brow furrowed. Something didn't feel right. She blinked, eyes adjusting to the light. Firm, male chest, sharp jawline, familiar face. Aiden, she gasped, bolting upright and crashing onto the floor with the sheets tangled around her. What are you doing in my room? She shrieked. Aiden sat up, rubbing his eyes. In your room, Harper? This is my suite. She scanned the room. Curtains weren't right. Carpet, wrong color. Folded suit on the chair? Not hers. Her heart dropped. No. Oh, yes, Aiden replied dryly. Harper covered her face, mortified. I went into the wrong room. He crossed his arms, still observing her like she was an unsolvable puzzle. Looks that way. But it wasn't intentional, she insisted. I figured, he said calmly. Otherwise, I'd have already called security. She opened her mouth to protest, then quickly shut it. Fair point. Aiden looked at her steadily. Tell me something, do you remember anything about last night? A chill crawled down her back. Define anything. You woke up smiling. I what? You looked like someone who just had the best night's sleep of their life. Her cheeks flushed. That means nothing. I hope so. Silence. Harper scrambled for her shoes, her hair a mess, nerves frayed. All right, this never happened. I was never here. No one will ever know. Sounds good to me, Aiden agreed. A knock at the door made them both freeze. "Mr. Mercer?" a woman's voice called. Harper's eyes widened. "That's Monica," she whispered in horror. Aiden turned to her sharply. "Hide." "What? Now?" Harper spun around. "Behind the couch? Too obvious. The closet. What if it locks?" "Under the bed," she hissed. "Just move," he said, motioning. She dove under the bed just as Aiden opened the door. Monica, a bright and curious coworker, stood with a clipboard in hand. "Good morning, sir. Sorry to disturb you, but—" She paused, examining him closely. "You look different." Aiden raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Like you didn't sleep well." "It's just the lighting in here." Monica seemed unconvinced but nodded. "Right. Anyway, breakfast is being served at the Marlin Room." "Thanks. I'll be there shortly. One more thing. Have you seen Harper? She disappeared after dinner, and I thought she might be with you." Aiden didn't even blink. "No. Haven't seen her." "Strange, but okay. See you soon, Mr. Mercer." Monica turned and walked off. The door clicked shut. Harper slowly crawled out, her dignity still somewhere under the bed. That was a horror film. "No argument here," Aiden muttered. Harper huffed as she grabbed her heels. "I'm going to my room, pretending this never happened, and pretending you don't exist." "Excellent strategy." She turned to leave when his voice called her back. "Harper." "What?" "A beat." Then, in the driest voice possible, "If you plan on barging into the wrong suite again tonight, maybe knock first." She gawked at him. "Are you joking?" Aiden tilted his head with a faint smile. "Maybe." She narrowed her eyes. "I'm never drinking around you again." And she was gone, storming down the hallway like a woman on a mission to erase the past. But deep down, Harper already knew this night wasn't going anywhere. It would stay with her, burned into memory forever. Harper moved through the resort halls like a fugitive. Anyone seeing her might have thought she'd committed a crime, and maybe, in her eyes, she had. "What a disaster," she muttered, gripping her room key and trying her best to act casual. She had two objectives: get to her suite unseen and pretend nothing happened. Simple. Reasonable. Foolproof. Until she turned into the main hallway and smacked right into Monica. "Harper," her colleague said with surprise. Harper froze. "Hey, Monica. What brings you here so early?" "Early? Girl, it's nearly 10 a.m. You vanished last night. Where did you go?" Harper's mind scrambled for a believable response, but her mouth moved first. "I went to bed." Monica narrowed her eyes. "Really? Because your hair is wild, your clothes are wrinkled, and you look like you just survived an earthquake." Harper gave a dry laugh. "Tough sleep." Monica folded her arms. "I'm betting you were with Aiden." Harper's heart jumped. "What? Why would you say that?" "Because I was just in his room and he seemed different." Harper felt cold sweat creep down her back. "Different how?" "Like someone hiding something." "Maybe he slept badly too," Harper offered with a shrug. "You sure you're not hiding anything?" "Of course not. You seem jumpy." "I'm hungry." "Hungry people are grumpy." "Oh, that makes sense." Monica finally backed off. Harper nearly collapsed with relief. "Let's get breakfast. You can tell me all about your so-called rough sleep," Monica added, dragging her toward the Marlin Room. Harper smiled faintly, pretending everything was fine. Nothing was fine. They sat near the balcony, overlooking the ocean. The scent of brewed coffee and fresh croissants filled the air, but Harper's nerves wouldn't let her enjoy it. Not when Aiden Mercer was just a few tables away, deep in conversation with two investors and looking perfectly collected. "You're staring at him weird," Monica noted. Harper nearly spilled her coffee. "I'm not." "You are." "I'm just stressed about the merger meetings." "Sure. That explains why your hand's shaking while holding your cup." Harper placed it down carefully. After breakfast, they headed to the resort's main conference hall. Final merger discussions. Everyone was serious except Harper, who kept catching Aiden's eyes from across the table. He tilted his head at her now and then, like he knew exactly what she was thinking. He was enjoying this way too much. Halfway through a debate on equity percentages, Aiden spoke directly to her. "Harper, could you double-check the financials from Section 4? His tone was formal, but his eyes sparkled with mischief. Harper kept her expression neutral. "Of course, Mr. Mercer." He gave the smallest smile. She knew then he wasn't letting her forget anything. When the meeting ended, Harper tried to escape, but he caught her near the door. "Miss James, a word?" he asked, completely professional. Monica raised a brow. You'll tell me about that later. Aiden led Harper to a private lounge. He shut the door, turning to her. We need to talk. Harper folded her arms. If this is about this morning, I've already deleted it from memory. I can tell, he said coolly. Unfortunately, I haven't. Her stomach clenched. What's that supposed to mean? He stepped closer. Pretending won't erase what happened. And if anyone finds out, there'll be consequences. Her brows furrowed. Is that a threat? A precaution, Aiden said with a smirk. I suggest we control the narrative before others do. Harper drew in a breath. What exactly are you asking? Cooperation, he said simply. She blinked. That didn't clarify much, but his look said more than the word ever could. She left the room, heart racing. What did cooperation mean in Mercer language? Back at Ocean Ember, Monica waved her over for lunch. You look like you saw a ghost, Monica said. Just tired, Harper replied with a forced grin. But as she began eating, she felt someone's gaze. Aiden. From across the restaurant, he was watching her again. She returned to her suite afterward, hoping for peace, but the room phone rang the second she sat down. Come to the terrace, Aiden's voice said. Click. The line went dead. Harper stared at the receiver, her stomach flipping. Something was definitely going on, and it was more than a misunderstanding. Harper found Aiden on the terrace, leaning against the railing, watching the waves roll in. He didn't look at her immediately. You've been dodging me since sunrise. She folded her arms. I'm trying to avoid drama. Aiden finally turned to her. Too late for that. What are you talking about? A rumor's going around. Harper frowned. About what? About us. Her stomach dropped. Us. Aiden nodded. Someone saw you leaving my suite this morning. What? Who? Not important. What matters is that the investors think we're involved, and they seem pleased about it. Harper blinked. They're happy about a fake relationship? Apparently, Aiden replied. Especially the Donovans. They like knowing their partners are stable and emotionally grounded. Harper stared. That's absurd. Is it? She hesitated. What do you want me to do? I want you, he said, voice steady, to pretend to be my girlfriend until the end of the trip. Harper choked on air. Excuse me. You heard me. She blinked several times. This is insane. Maybe. But it's working. Harper opened her mouth and found no solid argument. Mercer Innovations needed this deal, and Aiden knew she wouldn't let it fall apart. Harper hesitated. Aiden stepped closer. Just social appearances. Smiles. Dinners. Nothing extreme. When the trip's over, so is the act. She stared at him, and to her horror, a part of her was curious to see what would happen. If I do this, the deal gets signed and no one hears about the morning disaster? Aiden nodded. Exactly. Harper took a deep breath. Fine. But once we land back in Boston, it ends. Agreed, he said with a pleased smile. As Harper walked back through the resort, her mind spun. She was about to fake date her boss. What could possibly go wrong? Back in her room, Harper collapsed onto the bed. One glass of wine too many had led her to one of the most surreal agreements of her life. A knock snapped her out of it. She opened the door. Aiden stood there, flawless as always. Time to go over the plan, he said, walking in without waiting. Harper crossed her arms. You act like this is easy. It is. She rolled her eyes. We barely have chemistry at work. Aiden shrugged. Then we fake it. Eye contact. Light touches. Comfortable body language. Right? Because I totally look natural holding your arm, she muttered. You'll get used to it, Aiden replied. Rehearsing a fake relationship. That's a new low in my career. Better here than in front of the Donovans. Harper sighed. Fine. But if it backfires, I'm blaming you. Aiden smirked. Deal. That evening's cocktail party was their first test. Harper chose a classic navy dress, elegant but understated. When she stepped into the hallway, Aiden was already waiting in a tailored black suit. Ready? He asked. Harper breathed in. Let's just get it over with. At the Marlin room, they entered together. All eyes turned toward them, including Richard Donovan's. Henry, what a surprise seeing you both. Richard said. Harper's heart pounded. Aiden smiled politely. We're enjoying the retreat. Richard eyed Harper with curiosity. So, is it true? You two are a couple now. Before Harper could even process a reply, Aiden slid his arm around her waist, lightly, confidently. Yes. We are. Harper managed a convincing smile. It was unexpected, but it's been wonderful. Richard chuckled. Well, it gives me even more confidence in this partnership. Harper smiled tightly and let Aiden guide her toward the drinks table. Once they were out of earshot, she whispered, "How do you make this look effortless?" Aiden glanced at her. "Simple. Don't overthink it." "Easy for you to say," she muttered. "You're not the one pretending to like someone who treats you like a staff member." Aiden leaned in. "I never said I didn't like you, Harper." She froze, caught off guard. Before she could say anything, more investors joined them and the evening blurred into smiles, clinks of wine glasses, and polite nods. But during one conversation, Aiden's fingers brushed over hers, subtle, casual, and totally unexpected. Harper looked up sharply, meeting his gaze. It felt different. A chill moved through her, not from discomfort, but from something she didn't want to name. Was he just that good at pretending? Or was she starting to feel something real? After the party, Aiden and Harper strolled through the resort's garden. "I think we fooled them," she said. "I wouldn't say fooled," Aiden replied. "We just let them believe something that seemed believable." "You're milking this," Harper said, folding her arms. Aiden stopped walking and turned to face her. "You're benefiting too." She snorted. "You don't know me. I know you better than you think." The tension thickened between them. Aiden stepped closer. "Afraid of a little fun?" "This isn't fun, Aiden." He tilted his head. "What if it could be?" Harper opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She reminded herself it was all a performance, but then Aiden's eyes flicked briefly to her lips. "Good night, Harper," he said, his voice low. He walked away. She stood frozen, stunned by the shift in him, in herself. That night, she barely slept. The next morning brought a major meeting, the final contract discussion with the Donovans. Harper had to stay focused. Except Aiden sat right next to her, closer than usual, occasionally brushing her shoulder. And then Richard approached during the coffee break. "You two balance work and romance so well," he said, sipping his drink. Harper forced a smile. "It's not easy, but we make it work." Aiden nodded. Harper is a remarkable professional. Working alongside her and getting to know her personally, it's been enlightening. Harper's cheeks burned. Richard grinned. When chemistry is real, it shows. Then, Aiden casually placed his hand on the small of Harper's back, subtle, deliberate, and completely unnoticed by anyone but her. Her heart jumped. "See you both in the next session," Richard said and walked off. The second he was gone, Harper turned. "What was that?" Aiden raised a brow. "What do you mean? You're overdoing it." "I disagree. This is a business strategy," she hissed. "I'm not your toy." Aiden leaned in, voice low. "Then stop acting like you're affected." A shiver ran down Harper's spine. He knew. He was doing this on purpose, and it was working. But before she could snap back, Aiden turned and rejoined the meeting like nothing happened. Harper squared her shoulders. If he wanted to play games, she could play too. The meeting ended with an invitation to an informal lunch on the terrace. Richard Donovan insisted Harper and Aiden sit at his table with the other investors. "You two are impressive," Richard said. "Balance like that is rare." Harper smiled, then subtly let her leg brush against Aiden's under the table. He paused mid-bite. Harper noticed Aiden didn't pull away. In fact, he seemed to enjoy the challenge. For the first time, he looked intrigued. "So, Harper," Richard asked with genuine curiosity, "what's it like being with someone as high-profile as Aiden?" Without missing a beat, Harper placed a hand on Aiden's arm and smiled. "He might seem intense at work, but outside of it, he's thoughtful." Her fingers glided over his sleeve. Aiden froze for just a moment. "Gotcha," she thought. When lunch ended, he helped her up, but instead of letting go, he placed a steadying hand on her lower back. It lingered. Challenge accepted. Harper escaped to the pool after lunch, needing space. The sun was warm and the sound of waves was soothing. She picked up a novel, hoping for a moment of calm. No such luck. A shadow fell over her. Aiden. Still in a suit. Still in control. "Taking a break?" he asked, folding his sunglasses. She didn't sit up. "Is that allowed in your master plan?" He chuckled, "A real one. Seems like you finally learned how to play." Harper looked up. "And you don't like that?" "I'm surprised," he admitted, settling into the chair next to hers. "Because I'm unpredictable?" "No," Aiden said, removing his sunglasses. "Because you're enjoying it." She opened her mouth to argue, but couldn't. As complicated as it was, something about this back and forth was electric. Before she could answer, Monica rushed up. "Harper, they bumped dinner earlier. We've got to get ready." Harper stood reluctantly. "Guess this conversation's on hold." Aiden watched her go, looking forward to finishing it. Harper turned back just long enough to feel that heavy stare again. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't pretending anymore. Something between them had shifted and she wasn't sure she could stop it. Back in her suite, Harper took a moment to breathe. This had started as strategy, but her feelings were starting to unravel. She pulled out a sleek black dress. Classy, calm, controlled. Everything she was trying to be. Downstairs, the dining hall sparkled with soft lighting and quiet jazz. Investors mingled, sipping wine. She saw Aiden immediately. He looked at her with something unreadable, focused, yet softer. "You look stunning," he said as he approached. Harper blinked. "Thanks." He leaned in. "Ready for round 2? She smiled. "Born ready." He offered his arm. She took it. It wasn't just acting anymore. Not really. As they moved through the room, Harper could feel the investors' approving looks. The deal was nearly sealed and her presence clearly added to Aiden's image. But something inside her was changing. Throughout the night, Aiden remained calm, charming, professional. And yet his hand brushed hers more than once, his glances lingered a little too long. During a toast, he leaned in and whispered, "You're doing an incredible job." His breath grazed her ear. She turned slightly, their faces only inches apart. "So are you." His gaze dropped to her lips. Just for a second. And then, "Henry, fantastic work tonight." Richard interrupted. Harper quickly stepped back, heart pounding. Aiden addressed Richard with a polite smile. "Glad to hear it." Richard laughed. Seeing such a successful couple in action? Inspiring. Harper forced a chuckle. As the evening wound down, she needed air. She stepped onto the balcony, letting the breeze cool her flushed skin. But her thoughts were a mess. This was supposed to be temporary, fake. So why did it feel so real? Footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn. "Escaping the party?" Aiden asked. "Just needed space." He joined her, hands in his pockets. "You've been quiet. Are we going too far?" "Too far." Aiden echoed. "You mean the act, or something else?" Harper looked away. "Both." Aiden was silent for a long moment. "The contract's nearly signed. After that, we go back to our lives." She bit her lip. "So that's it." His voice dropped. "Unless you want something else." Her heart twisted. She should want to go back. That was the plan. But now, later that night, at the farewell dinner, Harper avoided sitting near him. She focused on chatting with Monica and their team. But she could feel his eyes on her. Waiting. Wondering. When the event ended, Harper went straight to her room, hoping sleep would offer peace. But a knock shattered the silence. She knew before opening the door. Aiden stood there, sleeves rolled up, jacket gone, tie loose, uncharacteristically casual. "You can't keep running," he said. "I'm not. You are. This is complicated, Aiden. It doesn't have to be." She frowned. "You're my boss. What if I said I'm willing to find a way to make it work?" Harper stared at him. "Give me a chance," he said softly. "Just one." She hesitated, then nodded. One chance. And with that, something shifted. The next morning, Harper woke with a strange calm in her chest. The contract was done. The performance was over. But the emotions? Still very real. Her phone buzzed. A message from Aiden. "Lobby. 30 minutes. Brunch with the Donovans." She got ready, trying to guess how he would act now. At the lobby, he was already there, cool and composed. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. On the way to the restaurant, he didn't bring up last night. He didn't need to. During brunch, Richard's wife leaned over to Harper and said, "You and Aiden, such beautiful harmony." Harper didn't know how to respond. Harper blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, thank you. You two really are a perfect match," the woman added. Aiden, seated beside Harper, gave a subtle smile. "Indeed." Back at Azure Bay Resort, Aiden walked her to the elevator. Harper crossed her arms. "You didn't say anything about last night." He met her eyes. "Did you want me to?" "I expected something. You asked for time. I respected that." Harper sighed. "It's frustrating." "Why?" She looked straight at him. "Because I wanted you to convince me." Aiden stepped closer. "You're already convinced. You just won't admit it." The elevator opened on her floor. Aiden tilted his head slightly. "I'll wait for your answer." And then he walked away. That night, Harper still hadn't made peace with her thoughts. Their flight to Boston was in the morning and the clock was ticking. Then her phone buzzed. "Monica, drinks at the Marlin Room? Last night here." "Harper, on my way." When she arrived, Monica handed her a fruity cocktail. "Finally. I thought you were going to hide all night." "I needed to think." Monica grinned. "About your boss looking at you like he's ready to ruin every professional boundary in history?" Harper's eyes widened. "What? Girl, don't pretend. Aiden Mercer isn't easy to read, but that man is into you." Harper laughed nervously. It's not that simple. But maybe it should be, Monica said. Sometimes we make it complicated when it's actually not. And then she saw him. Aiden. He entered the bar quietly, scanned the room, and sat alone at a corner table. Harper stared at him and everything clicked. She stood up abruptly. Where are you going? Monica asked. Harper smiled. To stop pretending. Monica laughed. Finally. Harper crossed the room like she meant it. Aiden looked up as she approached. Still waiting? She asked. For your answer, he replied. Harper took a breath. I don't want this to end. He stood. Are you sure? I am. He stepped closer. Then you finally understand. Understand what? That this was never just a performance. She didn't answer. Instead, he kissed her. And this time, there was no hesitation. No pretending. Just fire and truth. When they broke apart, Aiden whispered, You have no idea how long I've waited for this. I think I do. Let's go somewhere we can talk. Harper nodded. And they disappeared into the night. They walked the beach in silence until Harper finally said, If we do this, everything changes. I'm ready, Aiden said simply. And if it fails? Then it fails. But I'd rather risk it than regret not trying. She nodded. The next morning, their flight was quiet but full of meaning. At Mercer Innovations, everything looked the same. Except now everything had changed. After the first long day back, Aiden entered her office, closing the door behind him. We made it through day one, he said. No one suspects a thing. He smirked. Do you want them to? Harper smiled. Maybe one day. He stepped closer. I can wait. She didn't make him. Not this time.